Fala pessoal, tudo bom com vocês? Natália de Vivo de volta para gravar mais um vídeo especialmente para o canal do Elas na Pista. No vídeo de hoje, aproveitando que no domingo a gente vai ter aí 500 milhas de Indianápolis, decidi fazer um esquenta aqui. Aproveitar também que é quinta-feira, dia de TBT, vou colocar aí as 500 milhas de Indianápolis de 1977. Por que eu escolhi essa? Porque foi quando Janet Guthrie correu aí foi a primeira vez que ela conseguiu classificar e se tornou a primeira mulher a alinhar e disputar a tradicional prova da Indy. Só para uma pequena contextualização, a pilota terminou em 29ª por causa de problemas no motor. Ela largou em 26ª e deixou 4 pilotos para trás, sendo um deles o Clay Regazzoni. Só pedir aqui para vocês curtirem, comentarem, espalharem para todo mundo e, claro, não deixar de se inscrever no canal para receber sempre conteúdo de primeira qualidade das mulheres no esporte a motor. Mas agora é só colocar o fone, aumentar o som e curtir a corrida. Valeu e até a próxima.
And so they are started. And a woman was at the rear of Janet Guthrie's car there, Kay Bignotti, the wife of the team leader of another team, George Bignotti. There is Janet, the handshake for the first woman driver ever in the race. It's a historic moment in Indy. Up on front, of course, are the favorites. There's the pole sitter, Tom Sneva. Next to him, the Unser brothers, Bobby and Al on the outside. Now the rest of the field, starting with row 3. Number 25, rookie Danny Ungayas. Number 48, Pancho Carter. Number 5, Mike Mosley. In row 4, number 40, Wally Dallenbach. Number 60, Johnny Parsons Jr. Number 97, Sheldon Kinzer. In row 5, number 18, George Snyder. Number 78, rookie Bobby Olivero. Number 86, Al Loquasto. In row 6, number 36, rookie Jerry Sneva, brother to the pole sitter. Number 2, the defending champion Johnny Rutherford. Number 11, Roger McCluskey. In row 7, number 10, Boyd Ruby, oldest man in the field, almost 50. Number 73, Jim McElree, second oldest man in the field by a month. Number 98, Gary Bettenhausen. In row 8, number 24 is Tom Bigelow. Number 84, Bill Vukovic. 65, Lee Kuhnman. Row 9, 92, Steve Krisloff. 27, Janet Guthrie. 29, rookie Cliff Fusel. Row 10, number 16, Bill Puterbaugh. 38, Clay Regazzoni, a rookie. 17, Dick Simon. The final rows, number 11, number 42, John Mailer. 58, Eldon Rasmussen. And 72, Bobby Jones rounds out the field. They appear to be pretty well lined up at the moment, Jackie.
Yes, they seem to be getting themselves sorted out. The drivers have warmed up their tires already. There's no weaving and ducking to try and get the tire temperatures up. They've already done that at the previous lap, Jim. They're now trying to get themselves into shape as they're coming down. You can see that. There's a fairly good lineup.
Starter Pat Vidan is going to give it to him. The great flag is out there racing. They're racing in Indianapolis. Going for the lead is Al Unser from the outside of the first row. And behind him, Tom Sneva and Bobby Unser. Mario Andretti is moving up into 4th place. And then A.J. Foyt. Those sounds you hear are not explosions from the race cars. Everybody is all right. It's Al Unser and then Tom Sneva. Those are bombs that are set off yearly here as a signal that the race is underway. But it's Al Unser in car number 21, a two-time winner of this race, who has quickly taken the lead, and then Tom Sneva.
What a lovely lead he's got in this opening lap. Of course, he's got a fresh track ahead of him. He doesn't have any congestion. He's got all the air around his car that he wants. The car's been pressed beautifully onto the ground as they go through there. A nice, tight, even field.
Okay, and it's Al Unser, remember, Tom Sneva, and then Bobby Unser. There's Bobby Unser moving down low. A.J. Foyt tucked in behind. Al Unser out in front. He won this race in consecutive years, 1970 and 1971. His brother Bobby, also a two-time winner.
What a remarkable lead he's built up at this time. He's really been able to pull out very comfortably there. Of course, he's got that V8 Cosworth engine we've been speaking about. I can't look at A.J. Foyt here. It seems to me that A.J. Foyt's trying to make a move back there in the field. He did pass Mario Andretti in the front stretch going down there, so A.J.'s looking for a front-end position as well.
Technically, the Parnelli Jones people are very eager for their engine to be called a VPJ.
There is A.J. Foyt.
A.J. Foyt back in 5th position. Gordon Johncock is the man moving down low there. That's Foyt behind him. The two orange-looking cars.
And Gordon Johncock gets into 2nd position. Took Tom Sneva down there. It's right there in the groove as he went into turn 1. But Gordon Johncock has taken into 2nd position. Can he now close the gap on Al Unser, because Al really has taken advantage of this fresh, clean track with nobody disturbing the air for his wings and airfoil.
Still in all, Jackie, you don't steal the Indianapolis 500 in the first 3 laps, do you? There is AJ.
A.J. Foyt making an attempt, and he goes through. So now A.J. Foyt is in 4th position, the man who we all expect here to be charging, looking for his 4th Indy win. The gap is being closed by Gordon Johncock on the lead car, and that's A.J. Foyt just going out of your screen there, trying to get up in the front end there.
And so engine-wise, we have the VPJ engine, as they choose to call it, a modification of the British Cosworth engine, leading the race. In second place, though, a more traditional Offenhauser. In third place, another of the Cosworths, Tom Sneva, and then another V8, A.J. Foyt.
Yeah, the V8 engines are certainly showing themselves, but look at that lead that the front 2 cars have got. It's a fairly even race at this time. There's no great traffic congestion, which of course is comfortable. This is when drivers can run into trouble if there's a lot of traffic around them at the beginning of the race where nerves are high, tension is up, and people can make mistakes.
We might note parenthetically that actor Jim Garner was driving the pace car and did a pretty good job of it, didn't he?
Certainly went along very well. Janet Guthrie there is back in 26th position.
Well, that's where she started in the race, so she's holding her own at the moment. Coming to the start-finish line yet again. And there you see Foyt moving down, trying to move into third place. And Johncock has closed up on Al Unser. And A.J. Foyt has moved into third place in the race. We'll be back in a minute at the Indianapolis 500. The birthday boy today, Al Unser. This, in fact, is his 38th birthday. That's a sign to Tom Sneva that he's going 186 miles an hour. The pace very fast here as Al Unser continues to lead Gordon Johncock. Sneva still very much in the fight, and A.J. Foyt and Andretti behind him.
The lap speed being shown there to Al Unser, the leader, 186 miles an hour, is of course lower than the 200 miles an hour found for the pole position. This is expected. You imagine the tires, the car, and everything else are a little bit different for the race, particularly the fuel that they carry. It's a much heavier car, so therefore you wouldn't expect them to get anything like 200 miles an hour. But there's Gordon Johncock definitely closing up on Al Unser. The Gordon Johncock car seeming to edge into position, obviously trying to get into the draft to take advantage of the slipstream of the Al Unser car.
Originally, this was called the Brickyard, and the reason was because the racing surface was made of paving bricks for many, many years. But since then, it's been resurfaced, and this year, resurfaced again, as I think you mentioned earlier, Jackie. That's a very significant factor. You said it's the best tended racing surface you've seen.
I've never seen a racetrack more ready for racing than this. Franz Kegel, the man who presents the Indianapolis Motor Speedway every year so well, has done an outstanding job. Absolutely immaculate in every way. The top surface is obviously a very important thing. It's taken away a lot of the bump. That's Johnny
The defending champion, Johnny Rutherford, into the pits very suddenly and dramatically. He's going out of the race.
This is a remarkable thing. Without even stopping in the pits, he drives the car. It must be something very serious that's wrong with that car to have Johnny Rutherford immediately dismiss the possibility of any mechanical repair. He's taking it out of the racetrack.
And that's the way it is in racing. You just never know. The defending champion out, the first car out of the race. He'll be placed 33rd.
And now there's a very close thing there. There's the closing up on the lead car. Al Unser is being closed up on by Gordon Johncock. He's much closer now. Gordon Johncock beginning to put a bit of pressure.
Chris Economaki is down with the team manager of Rutherford's team, Tyler Alexander. All right, Chris.
Okay, Johnny Rutherford has had a tough break. Tyler Alexander, what was his problem?
Well, Chris, it appears that it jumped out of gear in top gear going down the straightaway, and the tachometer needle has come around, starting up the other side, which bends all the valves in the engine. So, you know, it's pointless for us to continue. John said the engine's lost power and it's making a lot of noise, so we're only going to do it more damage by continuing.
Tough break for two-time winner Johnny Rutherford. Over-rev the engine, the pistons hit the valves, and that's it for Johnny Rutherford.
All right, Chris, there in the pits is the 35-year-old rookie, the Hawaiian-born driver, Danny Ungaias, having major problems early in the race. That problem was spelled out very specifically by Alexander. Did they have that before?
I think they had it at the Ontario race. I seem to remember Johnny Rutherford having the car jump out of gear there, and of course the same thing happens. In Formula One racing, they have a rev limiter. Even when the car jumps out of gear, the engine's not allowed to over-rev. But they don't have it in their Indy engines. They could well have saved the serious situation if it had been fitted to the car. But there's someone going very slowly.
All right, that's Sheldon Kinzer, I believe, in car number 97, headed for the pits. And now smoke coming out of the back of his car. No, stops again. There is
Janet
Guthrie into the pits. The first woman in Indianapolis is making an unscheduled pit stop. Janet Guthrie in the pits in car number 27. The only green car in the field. There was a day here when green was considered unlucky. You couldn't even wear a green tie in the pits. There was a day, of course, when no woman would be allowed in the pits. Look at that smoke now. That's a full-blown engine by Kinzer.
It seems the King's still driving the car with all this smoke. He can't be looking in his rear-view mirror, Jim. It doesn't seem to be on fire. It just seems to be smoke that's probably coming out of the turbo there, because, of course, it's alcohol these cars race in, not gasoline.
There is, however, no yellow flag. All this happened after he pulled down off the actual racing surface itself. So the race goes on under the green flag. Al Unser and Gordon Johncock battling for the lead. We're very much in the early stages of the Indianapolis 500. Coming in, number 20 is the leader, Gordon Johncock. And they'll all be coming in now.
Johncock entering there. The George Bignotti team going to be waiting for him. Bignotti's team, one of the most experienced in this Indianapolis 500. George Bignotti himself, as a chief mechanic, has won no fewer than 6 Indy 500s.
More than any other mechanic.
Yes, he really knows where to go, and he knows exactly who to choose. These men are perfectly trained. Gordon Johncock being pushed out a little bit slow and getting out. The pit stop was good, but Gordon Johncock didn't seem to get away quite as sharp as one would have expected.
There's Tom Sneva coming out of the pits, and look at that. Al Unser going by, and they almost touched right there in the pits.
They nearly had it, and Janet Guthrie is still in the pit. Poor Janet, maybe that green is not being too lucky for her today, because she's still in the pit. Obviously very disappointed.
All right, and they're shuffling in the standings. It looks like they're going to stay the same for the moment, although the new leader is now A.J. Foyt, because A.J. has not come in as yet. There he is in car number 14, the man trying for an unprecedented 4th Indianapolis victory. Remember, nobody has ever done that. A.J.'s been trying for the 4th for 10 long years now, and he hasn't made it. He was 3rd 2 years ago. He was 2nd last year.
He would have to have 10 points alone for perseverance, because so many people have asked A.J. Foyt, are you going to get this 4th win? And if you get it, will you ever retire? And that's A.J. Foyt right now. Look at how he's got it. Oh, my goodness. He got the chop there. Car in front of him obviously didn't recognize him. Lee Kunzman, I think, didn't see in the rear-view mirror, Jim, and he really did give A.J. the chop. That could have been a bad situation.
A.J. may be saying a few choice words inside the car as he heads to the pits now for his first regularly scheduled pit stop. There'll be plenty of them before this race is done. It's 200 laps on this 2.5-mile track, 500 long miles. It's getting hotter and hotter, extremely humid. And here's the pit stop for A.J. Jim Gilmore's pit crew. One of them is A.J. Foyt's father. Chrissy Kanamaki is down near the Janet Guthrie pits. We're going to get down to him for a report now as A.J. goes out with a good pit stop. All right, Chris.
Well, the problem with Janet Guthrie's car is that the mechanics don't know what the problem is. They initially diagnosed it as a diaphragm in the fuel injection system that needs repair. They repaired that and it went out, and it's still giving trouble. They're now trying to diagnose the problem so they'll be able to fix it. A tough break for our First Lady.
All right, thanks very much, Chris. A.J. Foyt has held on to the lead. The pit stops were about the same. There's Danny Ungaius still in the pits, by the way. It looks like a long, long afternoon for him. He's certainly not going to be a contender. And here is the Janet Guthrie car. Janet's still sitting there, hoping to get back into the race. First woman to drive at Indy. However, A.J., although the pit stops seem to be about one as long as the other, there's some fuel spilling out. Looks like it's still on Janet, but she's giving no sign of it.
Looks like it's gone into the cockpit. If it is fuel, she's going to be uncomfortable later on.
I was going to say, A.J. must have slowed down less coming into the pits and accelerated better, because he held on to that lead and actually increased it a bit, I think. Foyt has the narrowest of leads over Gordon Johncock. Johncock closing in on him now. Johncock, who's been in the fight since the beginning, first with Al Unser and now with A.J. Foyt. Two of the most experienced race drivers in the world. Foyt at age 42, Gordon Johncock at age 40. As we said at the beginning, this is no place for young daredevils. This is for experienced, mature drivers. Look at this.
The way those cars are handling right now, it seems to be the Gordon Johncock's car is handling a little bit on the A.J. Foyt's, because you can drive almost anywhere on the racetrack. It seems that it's really well suited to the racetrack right now.
Okay, passing the start-finish line yet again. The two orange cars. Foyt in the lead. Johncock just behind him. Chris Economaki still down in the Janet Guthrie pits. Let's get an another report from him on what it looks like.
Guthrie is sitting in the car here. She saw me standing here, and she radioed her crew chief just a few feet away for him to tell Chris that everything was going according to plan until the problem developed. Now they've decided that it's ignition, and they're trying to find the malfunction in the ignition system. Pretty nice of this gal to take care of her friends at ABC.
This race for the lead, though, it's still A.J. Foyt narrowly ahead of Gordon Johncock. A look down the backstretch right now towards the VIP. There's a crash right in turn 2, right under the VIP suites there. It's Lloyd Ruby. It's the oldest man in the field, driving car number 10.
And the car's coming to rest there. He's ripped off one side of that car very heavily. There was fire there, of course, as it hit the wall. It hit the wall very hard in it. He's got his hand in the air. He seems to be okay. He's not getting out the car. If I were in there, Jim, I would be wanting to get out right now because, as we know, it's alcohol, and you can't see alcohol fires. It burns without a flame.
For all we know, it could be on fire now.
It could easily be. Lloyd Ruby is staying in that car. I don't like the idea of a man staying in the car that long. The rescue crews immediately going to it. You can see the fuel going across the track there on the left-hand side of the picture.
Could be that his legs are caught in there. The yellow flag obviously is out. Pat Sedan, the starter. There, that's not flame. That's the fire extinguishers going on now. Those rescuers know no more than we do whether it's fire because they can't see it when they first come in. So as a precaution, if nothing else, the extinguishers go on there, but Ruby is still in that car. It simply must be that either he doesn't know where he is or he's caught in some way. There's the stretcher coming out. All this taking place in turn 2 in full view of many in this crowd and particularly of the VIP suites that were erected a few years ago above turn 2. It seems to have been quite an unlucky turn. That's where Tom Sneva had his fiery crash a couple of years ago.
Well, I see them trying to get Lloyd Ruby out of that car. They've taken his crash helmet off. I see a man with that. Lloyd Ruby, of course, is not a young man, and to hit a wall at that sort of speed, he couldn't have been doing less than 170 miles an hour when he did hit that. That's an awful knock. And here we see the accident again in replay. You can see the smoke in the center of the screen now. The car is spinning. The car comes into contact. Look at the flash of flame there as the fuel tanks are ruptured. The car skids down the racetrack, still losing its wheels, losing its suspension, still traveling at a very high speed. As the car comes to a stop, the driver in it, the car's in the getting low in the field there, trying to get through. And there you see that wheel and tire bouncing down the track. Suspension totally demolished at the back. The rear aerofoil ripped off. Lloyd Ruby, who's done 17 races here, is now being lifted out of the racetrack onto the stretcher. They have very good medical attention here. They have doctors in all of these emergency trucks to make sure the drivers are being properly tended. More injury can be done sometimes getting a driver out of a race car than even by the accident itself. So obviously they're paying a great deal of attention. Lloyd's got his head up there, though I see him lifting his head. He seems to be quite conscious at this time.
Lloyd Ruby, who will be 50 years old come next January, the oldest driver in this field, older by a month than Jim McElreath, next to whom he started on the starting grid. Well, we'll get a report as soon as we can. Yes, Jack.
A man who's not had a lot of luck in the speedway. He's done very well in other racetracks, and we see again another isolated replay from a different angle here. The accident has already happened. He's had contact. The tire marks on the side of the track there on that white wall. The car is sliding down the racetrack, still tearing itself apart as these pieces fly off the car. It's difficult to imagine the violence involved when a racing car hits a wall at this speed. Remember, at more than 170 miles an hour he came in contact with that concrete wall. They're fragile projectiles. The driver sits with fuel tanks almost as his seat. It really is a ballistic missile at that speed, and what man can survive this? Look at the car, look at the damage. What an incredible accident, a typical Indianapolis accident.
All right, the yellow flag's still out. When we come back in a minute, we'll meet our ABC colleague, Chris Schenkel.
Schenkel with this report from Dr. Tom Hanna and his staff at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway Hospital. Lloyd Ruby is okay. Lloyd commented that he lost consciousness and only remembers getting on the stretcher, lost it again, came to in the hospital, has no scratches. The car was running smoothly, and it's sad that in his 18th Indy 500, he is out of the race. Here are the others out. The defending champion, Johnny Rutherford. Out of gear, the engine revving up to 12,000 RPM. Sheldon Kinzer is out with engine trouble after 14 laps. Dick Simon is out of the race with engine trouble the 24th lap. So 3 4-cylinder Oppenheisers are out of the race in the battle today on this very hot, humid day between the 4-cylinder Oppenheisers and the 13 V8s. It'll be interesting to see what happens, but we're glad to report that Lloyd Rubio's okay. Now, let's return to atop the grandstand here at Indianapolis and Jim McKay.
All right, thank you very much, Chris. And we get word that Janet is not out of the race. They're still going to try to work at that on that car. There is the blimp shot. All the pictures today, by the way, being provided by ABC management personnel. Unfortunately, all of the ABC technicians are still out on strike. Picture from the Goodyear blimp high overhead, and you can see the mark from the fire extinguishers there where Ruby's crash was, just coming out of turn 2. That's where he ended up.
They're still sweeping the track up. We're still running under the yellow there. You can see people still on the racetrack trying to clear up this mess. And here you see Janet Guthrie has come out of a race car. That is not a comfortable sight for any racing driver to have to get out of the car at the Indy 500.
And there's Mario Andretti also having a long pit stop in the Roger Penske car. He was running up in 5th place most of the way, but he's losing all kinds of valuable time right now.
Well, it's a very leisurely pace that these men are working at. They're pushing the car back out of the way from one of the other pits there. They're expecting a car to come in, and he's moving close to the wall, but I'm afraid it looks too leisurely for me, Jim.
Janet Guthrie still with her helmet on. We think still wants to get back into it. Let's go down there to Chris Akatamaki, see if we can find out.
You as hot as I am, Janet?
Well, it's pretty warm out there. Of course, at the moment, I'm soaking wet, so that helps a little.
What's the matter with your car? Do you know really yet?
Chris, I suspect it's an ignition problem. It has all the hallmarks of an ignition problem, and they are changing the ignition system right now.
They spilled fuel on your lap and then had to dump water on you. Is this going to be a big discomfort if you're able to get back out there?
Well, it's not too super comfortable, Chris. It wasn't that they spilled it. We filled the tank, and then we sat still for so long that the heat started forcing the alcohol out of the overflow, which is in the roll bar. So my seat filled up with the alcohol that was being pushed out of the tank by the heat, and that's what the trouble was.
Janet, your time on the track when things were right, was it what you expected it would be like?
Yes, I think it was just about what I expected.
And how about, did you have any frights or problems or surprises?
I did just about what I expected on the start. There was some very interesting activity in front of me in turn 1, and I treated it in a conservative manner. I told you I wouldn't be surprised if I found myself last on the first lap. I wasn't quite last, and then when things smoothed out, I started moving on up, and that was just what I planned to do, except unfortunately we had this trouble.
Well, Janet, we want to wish you all the best, and you hope you get back in the race.
Thank you, Chris.
Okay, back to you, Jim.
Janet Guthrie still trying. And the yellow flag is still out. There is Pat Badan with it. And there in the pits, Tom Steva availing himself of the yellow flag. Got a pit stop. Oh, now the green is out. And John Cock is jumping point.
Well,
Cody Johncock has taken the lead from AJ.
He seemed to get a real jump there. Gordon Johncock really got it on right at the right moment. He must have just been looking in the light system here. And there's lights all the way around this racetrack. It's not only at the start-finishing line that the green flag is given. When that green flag is shown, green lights automatically go on all around so the drivers can see them. And Gordon Johncock obviously saw that green flag seconds or moments before A.J. Foyt did and got his foot on that 900 horsepower. And of course, these cars are turbocharged. Inside the cockpit of the car, a driver can adjust the boost. And when he does that, he can just increase the amount of horsepower incredibly. It's a sort of automatic power increase. And I think Gordon Johncock at that moment really stood on it and got ahead of A.J.
That can certainly do it. That powerful thing that you said. It feels like somebody shoving you hard from behind. And now he's going to try to put a lap on Tom Steva. You saw that Steva was caught in the pits. He was coming in under the yellow, as most of the drivers had to take advantage of that after Lloyd Ruby's crash. But suddenly the green came out. Steva still through his entire acceleration period, and in the process lost almost a lap to the leader. He had been running right there in third place up to then.
He just left it a little late to come into the pits. He obviously didn't judge it too well, and there was a lack of communication there because he shouldn't have been caught like that.
Tom Steva, the former school teacher who was the first man to turn an official lap at more than 200 miles an hour here in the time trials, and who sat on the pole, is now almost a lap behind. And it's very, very important to stay on the same lap with the leaders, particularly when a yellow flag comes out.
And he'll be playing with that boost in there, as I was speaking about earlier, because if he's going to stay ahead of him, he could well be able to help himself.
Gordon Johncock still with the lead, having stolen it on the restart of the green flag from A.J. Foyt, who had been leading the race. It's very, very seldom you'll see anybody do that. We've seen A.J. Foyt react quicker than all the others on, dozens of occasions, I think, while we've been watching races.
It's just anticipation, and obviously Gordon Johncock really had his pedals in the right place when he got to that spot, because by Jove, he stood on it. And he's driving a very well-calculated race. His car is handling well too, Jim.
Okay, you can see some of this huge crowd. Chris Economaki stacked down by Mario Andretti's pits. Mario having his problems. What are they exactly, Chris?
Mario Andretti behind me has been in the pits 12 minutes. The reason they're changing the right-hand exhaust header, I have the spare left-hand one here. This is cool at a normal temperature. What they're taking off the car is red hot, almost molten metal, to try and get him back in the race. A tough break for Mario Andretti and a tough job for his crew. Back to you, Jim.
All right, Chris, explanation on the Mario Andretti situation. Johncock still leading the race. Foyt chasing him all the way. Remember, and here they are, both coming into the pits. The two leaders coming in simultaneously. Boy, this could really be something. This is the ultimate example of a pit stop being able to win or lose a motor race. Whoever gets out fastest will be the leader. It's as simple as that.
This is really a head-to-head against the Foyt pit, and of course the George McNaughty crew, who looks after Gordon Johncock. That's the one we're looking at right now. This is going to be interesting to see who gets out, and Gordon Johncock is accelerating away, and A.J. Foyt's going to try and overtake him in the pit lane, but no, he's not going to be able to do it. Just head-to-head.
Have to say that was a dead heat on the pit stop. Johncock still leading by exactly the same amount he was when they came into the pits. The time we got was 12.2 seconds. Boy, that's fast. There's Al Unser in the pits now, and Al is curious. Wonder what the problem is.
He's really upset. Look at him. He's punching the steering wheel. He's really annoyed. This is very difficult for a racing driver to have emotions of this kind. Remember, look how annoyed he is. He's got to go back out in that racetrack. He's got to stay calm. And look at the time, how it's clocking up there. 23 seconds, 24 seconds. He's up to 25 plus seconds as he moves himself out. Now, he has to calm himself down, Jim, to get the best out of that race car. He can't be upset. He can't be annoyed. And he can't be aggravated.
That's why most of the drivers up on front are experienced drivers, men over 40 years of age. It takes a while to get the maturity to drive a race car fast, but still be in total control of yourself at all times. Al Unser, I have never seen that upset, I must say. But it's still Johncock, by a matter of feet, over A.J. Foyt at Indianapolis. Bill, we're back at Indianapolis. Jim McKay with Jackie Stewart, and there is Mario Andretti out of the race now. It's been quite a month for him. Home for part of this month was a hotel in Monte Carlo where the cars raced past the famous casino and along the sea. Remember, he's a Grand Prix driver as well as at Indy. Home for a race driver in Indianapolis is the Speedway Motel just behind Turn 2. 11 months of the year, it could be 1,000 other motels in America. But to try to get a room here in the month of May is to find out just where you stand in motor racing. As Mario says, it's very different from Monte Carlo. Here, the magic names are Foyt and Unser, Rutherford and Johncock, and of course, Mario Andretti, who won the big race in 1969. It's as American as Memorial Day weekend. By the quiet surf of the Mediterranean, the man who lived as a boy in an Italian displaced persons camp mingles with European royalty, past, present, and pretenders. French film stars, Italian motor magnates, and several thousand Englishmen in neat blue blazers. And he hears his name murmured now with others: Moss, Fangio, Chiron, Nuvolari, Clark, and Stewart. Andretti could win the World Championship this year. At the Speedway, it's cement and beer around the pool rather than terrazzo and chilled wine. But it's all the same to the man by the pool, a realistic romanticist who knows that it takes courage, patience, determination, and a little bit of luck to make all your dreams come true. But the luck was not here for Mario today. And now back to the race. Before somewhere around 400,000 people. There's no official attendance figure here, nor have we gotten even a semi-official estimate, but it is probably around 400,000. It looks like the biggest crowd we've seen. It's a hot, hot summer day, just the way you think Memorial Day weekend.
While we've been away, Jim, Tom Sneaver has done a very useful thing for himself. He's unlapped himself. He's got himself in the same lap as the leaders right now, so that's a significant thing as this race is run through, because if Tom Sneaver was down one lap, he was never really going to be able to catch that back, particularly if a yellow came out. So he's in good shape.
Okay, well, it's still Gordon Johncock leading A.J. Foyt. Those are the two significant cars in the race at this moment. And there's Janet Guthrie, still sitting in the pits, but still trying to get back in the race.
Well, she's very keen to get out there. There's been so much publicity about her. But right on the racetrack right now, the pace is very hot. And in fact, the pace is so hot that the temperature is incredibly hot, around about 130 degrees on that track surface there. It must be incredibly difficult for the drivers. Very humid, very tiring. Gordon Johncock, a little man but a strong man, is obviously pushing this car to its absolute limit, because by Jove, he's still keeping a hot pace.
And to an extent, the taller you are, the tougher it is to get into these race cars nowadays. They get smaller and smaller and slenderer and slender.
That's why people of average height like you and I, Jim, are so well suited to racing.
That's right. I may have to take it up. But the race goes on. Bill Fleming is also with us today. He's down by the Johncock pits. May have a word with Bill in just a minute. He's trying to get George Bignati, who is the crew chief, the man who's won more Indianapolis 500 than any other crew chief. Let's go down to Bill Fleming in the pits right now.
I'm with George Bignati, the crew chief of the Dallenbach and Johncock cars. George, give us an estimation as we come fairly close to the halfway mark in this race, how things are going for you.
Well, they're going pretty well right now. Gordon Johncock's leading the race, but Foyt's right behind him, and he's awful tough. So it's a question of how we can keep up the tire changes, the pit stops, and how much boost we can put on later in the race.
How about the fuel situation? I noticed that you've covered up that outside gauge. Is that for psychological reasons?
Well, we don't want our competitors to know how much we're burning, but we're getting good mileage, and it looks pretty good for us right now.
All right, it could be critical, though, as you come down to the late stages, right, if you turn up the boost?
Oh, yes, we're saving it if we can.
Okay, that's the story from George Bignati. Back to you, Jim.
One of the most remarkable and one of the pleasantest people in racing, George Bignati. All three of his cars are not only still running, but are in the top 10. There's Johncock leading the race, Wally Dallenbach in car number 40, and Johnny Parsons Jr. in car number 60. Monday Night Baseball coming up on ABC tomorrow. The Yankees and the Boston Red Sox. That's an old rivalry. And the Los Angeles Dodgers running away with their division so far, and the Houston Astros. Of course, Jackie could explain that to you in greater detail, but we don't have the time yet.
No, I'm afraid that's a new game to me altogether. But right now, that is my game. And motor racing at this time at the Indy 500 is the biggest thing in motor racing. There's no race in the world that attracts such international attention as this one. The eyes of the whole world are on it right now. And Gordon Johncock, when he won this race the first time, I think even he thought it was a little bit lucky because of the weather, and he would love to win it right now today, fair and square. And what a man to have behind him, people like A.J. Foyt, Tom Sneaver, all pressing him hard.
Tremendous interest in this race all around the world where people are listening by radio. Unfortunately, Sid Collins, for many years, the voice of the Indianapolis 500, is not with us this year, racked by the pain of a terminal illness. Sid died by his own hand just a few weeks ago. We all miss him very much here. The race going on in Indianapolis. Gordon Johncock and A.J. Foyt still the principals. Foyt, after an unprecedented fourth victory here, nobody's ever done it. Here is Bobby Unser in the pits at Indy. He's been running third and fourth in this race. Very well up there, but this looks like a slow one.
He's having conversation there. He's still got his visor up. They're still working on the car. They're putting it down. There doesn't seem to be the fever excitement there that I would normally expect. It's a long pit stop, 20.4 seconds. He doesn't even seem to be accelerating hard out of the pits.
Well, excuse me, here is A.J. Foyt coming into the pits, but not at his normal rate of speed. A.J., I think, is coasting in. Could be out of fuel.
My goodness, if that's happened, he sort of has had this trouble before. One of the things about A.J. Foyt, he's not only the driver, he's the crew chief in a way. He's the car designer. He's almost the chief mechanic. He's almost the boss of that operation. George Bignati handles the entire administration of the Gordon Johncock car, but A.J. Foyt almost runs that entire team himself. He's got some great hands working for him, but he's the boss, and if there's been a mistake at this time, it could be his mistake.
Okay, well, that cost him a lot. Now let's go down to Bill Fleming.
I want to get a word with Jim Gilmore here. When A.J. came in, Jim, he came very slowly in here, and it looked like he just had a trickle of fuel left. What happened?
Bill, that would be our very best guess, that they must have ran out of fuel just on the 4th turn. So he's able to coast in, then restarted the engine and refueled.
It's amazing he could get it restarted because, you know, with this kind of heat down here, you could get a vapor lock and be sitting there slow.
I don't think he did any damage at all to the engine. I think everything worked out fine.
Pretty close for comfort.
Right.
Are you worried about John Cock and his speed or anything?
Well, we have to be worried about Gord. He's doing a marvelous job of driving. We don't know what his fuel consumption is, but we have to be worried about him.
How about Rubber?
Rubber seems to be doing very well.
Thanks, Jim.
Bobby Unser in the pits again. Now, that pit stop really cost A.J. Foyt because although the time of the pit stop itself was 15 and 9/10 seconds, not bad, he lost all kinds of time coasting slowly into the pits. Any ideas on Bobby, Jackie?
I don't know, but Bobby's situation doesn't seem good. I'm afraid that Bobby Unser, who of course is a great favourite here, is in trouble. It's a very leisurely look that's going on around that pit right now.
Well, right now, the deceiving appearance of serenity here to an extent with Gordon Johncock with a comfortable lead now over A.J. Foyt, then Sneva, Al Unser, and Wally Dallenbach. There now we have 2 of Pignati's cars in the top 5.
He's a remarkable man. These are the old cars, and there is Bobby Unser undoing his seatbelts, unplugging his communication from his helmet, and stepping outside with the American Eagle on his crash helmet. It must be a very disappointed Bobby Unser. Potentially a race winner today, a man who has won the race twice previously from Albuquerque, New Mexico, a disappointed man.
At age 43, a man who won the race in 1968 and again in 1975. Bobby Unser out of action for this year, 77 at Indy. The word a broken oil line, the probable cause.
Well, there's so much can go wrong with a racing car. The vibrations and the speeds, you know, they're looking at this long straight straightaway here down the front straight. They're getting up to 200 miles an hour down there on a day like this. And when a car is doing that, all sorts of things can go wrong. Look at that car there, high on the groove.
Okay, a word with Bobby Unser now, with Chris Economaki. Here we are.
A top 500 for you. You're going very well. The same lap with John Cock and Foyt, and now you're parked. What's the reason?
Something went wrong with the magneto, Chris. I don't know what, but just as I was getting ready to come into the pits, they just started missing really bad. This was all of a sudden. And it was running good up till then. And
what are the track conditions, Bobby, and what about the heat?
Well, the track conditions are real nice. Geez, I've never seen a racetrack in such good a shape as it was today. My car was handling super good, you know, better than average, and we were just running a conservative race to win.
Bobby, your uniform's dry. We announcers are soaking wet in here. You're a cool cat. Was it comfortable in the car?
It's a comfortable race car to drive. The Clayton people build good stuff, Chris.
That's the way. Bobby Unser, a 2-time winner, is walking now. Back to you, Jim.
We're very close to the halfway mark here, but only halfway. How many things can happen in the second half at Indy? You couldn't enumerate them just since we've been here the last few years. But it's still Gordon Johncock right now with that comfortable lead, being watched by a crowd approaching 400,000 people. Seats, I guess we would mention, for 250,000 people.
An incredible arena for sport. Listen, look at the tire marks as cars are spun out of there as they come out of turn 2. That's been causing a lot of trouble. Turn 4 used to be the biggest trouble, but now turn 2 seems to be causing a lot of slippery conditions for drivers as they're now setting the car up. The groove in this racetrack, you can see it now because of the new surface of the racetrack.
Another look at the standings. Johncock, Foyt, Sneva, Al Unser, and Dallenbach. The race goes on. We're at the Indianapolis 500 on a hot Memorial Day weekend. This is Jim McKay with Jackie Stewart, Chris Schenkel, Bill Fleming, and Chris Economaki reporting on the racetrack on the current leader, Gordon Johncock, in car number 20. This is not one of the cars we talked about earlier that has the fancy new racing engines from England, the Cosworths adapted from the Formula One or Grand Prix engine. This has the more traditional Offenhauser engine.
Well, it's proven to itself very successful here in the past. Gordon Johncock seems to be driving it as hard as he can today so far.
All right. Things are still this way. Let's take a look at Jackie Stewart on this racetrack at another time.
It's 5 a.m. in the morning. The sun hasn't come up yet, but the moon's still high. I've just come in from Europe. For me, it's 11 o'clock in the morning, just the time to go for a walk. I'm going to walk around this great big speedway here, this 2.5-mile oval, to have a look at it like I've never seen it before. The eminence and the emptiness here at this time of the morning is awe-inspiring. Before we finish this walk, these empty seats will be filled up with the ardent enthusiasts who are prepared to sit outside all night waiting for the gates to open. I've walked out of pit lane and I find myself here in turn 1. The thing that immediately hits you is the new top surface. This has been put on for the 77 race. It's the first time that this racetrack's been surfaced all the way around for a very long time. You notice the dark line of the groove here. Then over there, the much lighter colour, where no driver wishes to tread. That's virgin territory, and if you get out there, the chances are you're going to have an accident. The track is absolutely immaculate. I can never remember in all of my experience ever seeing a racetrack so beautifully turned out and prepared for a race. Clarence Kriegel, the man who looks after this racetrack, should get a great big bouquet. There's hardly a speck of dirt between the wall and the racetrack itself on the outside, and then on the inside, the beautifully kept lawns, cut right to the edge of the track. And over there, you've got these flower beds, again, beautifully kept, and the finely manicured privet hedges behind that. Over there is something that I don't like. There's a single barrier over there, and that I don't approve of. If a race car were to lose a wheel up here through a mechanical failure or coming together, he could get into this infield here and hit that. He could even go right over it, and that isn't safe. I'd like to see triple height barrier there, or a concrete wall, or even chain link fencing would be better. But Indianapolis, on the whole, is a very safe racetrack with tremendous facilities. All the rescue trucks, all the fire trucks, a hospital in the field. Very high standard has been kept at Indianapolis over the years in safety. I've walked round to turn 2 now. You see the luxury suites that were built in 1973. You see that the sun is now rising, and I'm sitting below another great safety benefit here at Indy, the great debris or debris fence that protects the spectators. I'm sitting on top of turn 2, above this 9-degree banking, sitting on the wall that, of course, is freshly painted for the 77 race. The cars entering turn 3 here will be coming in at around 220 plus miles an hour. As I look to the outside, to the outfield here, I see the new grandstands, and down here in the infield, I see the old grandstands. Can you imagine now that at Indianapolis they can seat 250,000 people? In the infield, they can accommodate 25,000 cars. The whole complex encompasses 559 acres. It's got a 9-hole golf course in the infield, and just outside the racetrack, an 18-hole championship golf course. Quite a spread. This is the signature left by a race car on a track, a signature that no racing driver wants to leave. These tire marks are from Jerry Sneaver, who started to spin in turn 3 up there and went all the way down to turn 4. He spun for 500 feet on the hard surface and then spun an additional 400 feet on the grass. For a race driver, it's like a nightmare, like a bad dream when he starts to spin at this speed. He just sits there and hopes that he's going to come to a stop without making contact, either with a wall or with something in the infield. At the speeds now attained at Indianapolis, you spin for a very long time. As I walk out of turn 4, I'm impressed. I'm impressed by the vastness of this racetrack at this point. This is the beginning of the pit lane, the entrance to pit lane. As I look down pit lane, I see a regiment of fire extinguishers standing at attention. So I come to the end of my morning walk around this 2.5-mile speedway. I come to this, a yard of brick striping the track. It's all that's left of the original brickyard, and how many famous names have crossed this. The air is still, but the atmosphere is pregnant. The fans wait for the cars and their stars to burst into life and demonstrate their superhuman talents around this great racetrack. In other parts of the world, there are older racetracks than Indy. But for me, I think it's the granddaddy of them all.
Jackie Stewart in the cool silence of the hour of dawn at Indianapolis. How different now. The noise, the crowd. And there are the standings. Gordon Johncock still leading. A.J. Foyt second. Then Sneva and Al Unser and Wally Dallenbach. It's tremendously hot, getting hotter and more humid as the day goes on this May 29th, 1977. Johncock still showing no signs of shaking. That's one of his pit crew, by the way. Well, that'll give you an idea exactly how hot it is here. And of course, it's at least twice as hot inside the race car, and the energy of the man could be a factor before this race is over.
Well, a racing driver today will certainly lose a minimum of 6 to 7 pounds. 7 pounds for a man of Gordon Johncock's size is an awful lot, because he isn't a big man. Gordon Johncock must stand only around 5'6" in height. He's not a fat man, he's a muscular man, he's a very fit man. The nervous energy as well as the sweat is losing.
Only 3 cars on the same lap now. Johncock, Foyt, and Sneva. We'll be right back.
In the 61st Indianapolis 500, at this stage of the race, we now have 15 cars out of the race. We have 4 V8s out, 11 Offenhausers. 3 former winners are out. Let's take a look at the list. First out was the defending champion, Johnny Rutherford, Sheldon Kinzer, Dick Simon, Clay Regazzoni, Lloyd Ruby, who had the accident, Al LaQuesta, George Snyder, Bali Olvera, Cliff Husel, Mario Andretti, Mike Mosley, Jim McElreath, Bobby Jones, Bobby Unser, and Bill Vukovich, who went 117 laps. And the machines are beginning to show the attrition, the heat here, because the Weather Bureau has told us that the official temperature is 87 degrees. They indicated that the humidity was only 45%. And if you're out here, I can tell you it seems a heck of a lot higher. So 15 cars are out of the race at this point. Attrition on our pace cars. We lost a battery, so they're not the only ones that are having their trouble. But there won't be any trouble tomorrow night here on ABC, as we're proud to present regional baseball coverage. We have 2 games. The New York Yankees will be at Boston to meet the Red Sox. Our other game will be the Los Angeles Dodgers against Houston. The times are 8:30 Eastern and Pacific and 7:30 Central. In Los Angeles, the Dodger game will be seen live at 5:30. We'll be back after a bit, but right now to Jim McKay.
It sure is the...
Oh, and Gordon Johncock right out of the groove, really high in turn 1. He's lucky to get off of that. I thought he was going to go into the wall there. He must have made a major error of judgment at that time.
He wasn't in any traffic or anything. He's not being hard-pressed.
He must have been thinking about something else, Jim, because he really almost had it all wrong. Remember, that car was entering that corner at around 200 miles an hour, and he just got it wrong. He just was on the wrong part of the racetrack. He looks as if he's driving it extremely erratically. It may be that the heat has got to Gordon Johncock. I don't like the look of that at all. Look at that time. He left at least 3 or 4 yards away from the wall. He would normally be going within feet of that wall, and suddenly he's changed his whole driving technique. I don't quite understand this.
Well, you know, Jackie, in years gone by, as you know, there often were relief drivers in this race. However, the past few years we've had the rain and the coolness. I wonder if they're not thinking enough about that.
Well, maybe so. Maybe there is a relief driver in mind, but I don't know. Gordon Johncock at this time, it may be something to do with the handling of the car. It may be a tire situation, but it looks to me, you know, I've driven a racing car from time to time, and when I do get very hot, when I do get very tired, I'll occasionally have a bad spell in the middle of a race where it's difficult for me to get my head synchronized, and this could be the thing with him, because this heat and humidity is very high.
Is this something like an ordinary person driving along a long, straight road late at night, trying not to fall asleep? Is there a similarity? You have to shake your head?
It is very similar, and it could be right now that the head is being shaken inside that car. He's within radio communication with George Bignotti, so it could be that George Bignotti knows something about what's going on, but he's in trouble.
Of course, it's not only the heat in the air and the heat of the engine, but it's the suit that the driver wears. He's very hot in there.
Been any number of serious accidents here in Indianapolis, which the drivers walk away from. Why? Because of the tremendous emphasis on safety ordered by the Speedway and by the sanctioning United States Auto Club. Safety in car construction and safety in what the drivers wear when they're at the wheel. Let's take a look now at the driver's safety equipment. He starts out with his flame retardant underwear. Long johns, they're called. Double thickness nylon material. Hot and uncomfortable. Tops and bottoms. Regardless of how hot the day, they're mandatory. $77 the set. His socks look like any other pair of sweat socks, but they're specially made out of flame-retardant nylon. $20 the pair. Then comes the uniform. Double thickness, quilted, hot and uncomfortable, but more importantly, safe. Tailor-made, $281. Then his driving shoes, specially made of flame-retardant material with soles that he can feel the pulse of the throttle under his foot. $94 the pair. Then over his head, another nylon flame-retardant hood. The Europeans call it a balaclava. The price, $40. On the bottom of his crash helmet, he fastens a nylon skirt, flame-retardant material, which he tucks inside the collar of his driving suit. This to keep any flames from getting in his shirt. The price of this, $36. Then, the most important piece of safety equipment, the crash helmet. Polycarbonate, an expensive piece of equipment and the most important part of a driver's safety gear. The driver's visor, the shield, the cheapest part of the gear at $11, the helmet, $88. And then comes the driving gloves, specially made with treated leather palms so he can get the feel of the wheel, flame-retardant nylon backing, lined with wool, and then under the wool, more flame-retardant nylon. Expensive at $91 the pair. And to carry all of this material is a special ditty bag, $55. So the total cost of a driver's safety gear, $793. And he needs a second set, too, for when one's in the wash. So to come to Indianapolis, you need almost $1,600 worth of safety equipment. But it's not as expensive as it sounds, because the supplier, Simpson Safety Equipment, pays the freight on all orders over $1,000.
Want to be able to identify that a little bit? Perhaps imagine putting on your long winter underwear, your ski pants and boots, your parka and a ski cap and going out to mow the lawn. That would be vaguely like it.
Well, it's in days like this that Jackie Stewart is very happy that he's retired as a racing driver, because getting into all that gear today is no pleasure. But I wonder if this man is suffering from that kind of heat as he drives round here, because his driving definitely, even though he's leading the race, and this is the remarkable thing in my mind, is that he seems to be at this time driving erratically.
He still does.
It seems at this point that he's still not using the racetrack as he previously was using the racetrack. And this, you know, is rhythm. To drive around Indianapolis, it is a whole rhythm that you have to produce. It could be, as I say, that he's got himself slightly out of sync in that rhythm. Gordon Johncock's not a new man. He's not a weak man. He's a tough little man. And he's got a lot of knowledge and experience. But it does seem odd to me that he's got himself into this sort. Look where he is in the racetrack right now. He came out of turn 4 there, and he wasn't within 5 yards of the wall on that lap.
Still has a very comfortable lead. There's Denny Ungaius, a fellow who was born in Hawaii. He was the fastest qualifying rookie, qualified 7th fastest in the race, but he is out of it now. He'll be back next year. That was the other car of the Parnelli Jones team, along with Al Unser. Well, is John Cox still leading the race? We would hope he'll be able to go on. We'll be back. Again, we return to Indianapolis, where Gordon Johncock still leads the Indianapolis 500, trying for his second victory in this race. Johncock, who has driven well on many occasions. Last year, he finished 3rd in this race. The year before, he had no luck. He had a gear break on him and finished 31st. How is he driving now, Jack? Does he still look erratic, or has he smoothed it out?
He seems to have got his act together a little bit. He seems to have got himself together a little bit. I think he's been getting message. And
Here's AJ.
AJ's come into the pit. AJ's been worked on there. He had his signal there from Jack Stern earlier on to come into the pits. His crew chiefs are on the job there. Big John in the back there. You can see the man beginning to push the car. Big John Fisher, man of great strength, pushing AJ away, trying to help the clutch a little bit as the car goes out. Another quick stop by AJ's team. This team have been working this year in NASCAR races as well as USAC championship races under a lot of treasure. And Sneeva's coming into the pits very fast.
John Cox still out there.
Sneeva has been coming into the pits so quickly. I've been expecting him to overshoot the pits every time. The more experienced drivers here at Indy have been going that little bit slower when they get close to the pit. But Tom really has been going hard in it, in a longer pit stop than AJ by quite a margin.
AJ was 12.7 seconds. We had it unofficially this time. And that's much longer for Tom Sneeva in the Roger Penske car, but he's back out again. John Cox still on the track, leading the race. There he is in the Car number 20.
He's tucked in behind his own teammate, Wally Dolan, back here. This may be helping him to set himself a pace and a rhythm, because Wally Dolan back's leading him around the racetrack, so maybe this is giving him something more to aim for in his mind. But certainly I can't account for the fact that Gordon Johncock was driving as erratically as he was earlier on. It's difficult to say that about a man who's leading the Indianapolis 500, but it certainly was obvious to us as he went wide in turn 1, and he's going into the pits.
Okay, Gordon Johncock coming into the pits for a scheduled pit stop. Remember, AJ has already been in. Steve has been in. Now we'll see who wins the battle of the clock in the pits. AJ's was 12.7 seconds, remember.
The George McNaughty pit there under the masterful eye of George McNaughty. Pouring water on John. He's pouring water inside there. He's been drinking as well. He's pouring water in his suit. It'll take a long time for that suit
to go through. Stop.
And he can't, he's got the brake on. He's not let the brake off. He can't be thinking clearly. He held the brake on there as they're trying to push him away. That's an unusual thing. He can't have his head in gear, I don't think. I think it may well be the heat that he's suffering from.
A.J. Foyt gained 4.5 seconds on that pit stop. Bill Fleming is standing by in the George McNaughty, the Johncock pits. Let's go down to him for a report now.
This is a report from Gordon Johncock's pit on his condition. He came in and it was just absolutely dying of thirst. He said, "Give me water, water, please." And so they gave him a slug of ice water. And I don't know whether it affected him in the pit or not, but he didn't get his clutch all the way down, and that was the reason he went out so slowly. It gave his pit crew a frightful moment, but he did keep the car going. But as Jim has pointed out, and Jackie too, he has been driving perhaps a little erratically. Maybe it's not all just the pushing of the car. It might be the condition of the driver in the heat. Back to you, Jim.
All right, a good report, Bill, because there now is no question. Gordon Johncock, by his own words, is suffering from the heat out there.
He is suffering from the heat, there's no question about that, and it's difficult for Gordon to get his mind back in. He's got to think about his racing car, to think about the question of his pushing, his understeer. And of course, pushing when it happens in a racing car is when you turn the steering wheel in this left-hand corner and the car wants to go straight on instead of turning left. That's called understeer, is another word. And Gordon Johncock was experiencing that, as was mentioned there. But to try and get himself really sorted out in his mind is not an easy task for a racing driver when he starts to break up his concentration. He was giving a wide berth there to these other cars, and even that, he wasn't using the draft.
Jackie, you know, AJ is beginning to move up. I get it that he's closing in about a second or a little better every lap.
Well, that's an enormous advantage to be taking out of this lap, which is at 46, and then there is Janet Guthrie, still in the pit. She's taken her helmet off. It's resting in the car there. They haven't given up, Jim. They really do want to keep this lady in the race.
All right. They will not give up, the Rolla Volstead crew. There is A.J. Foyt really closing in on the leader, Gordon Johncock. This could be one of the most memorable Indianapolis 500s of them all. The two cars in your picture now.
Well,
Gordon Johncock with Foyt closing. There's AJ.
And of course, AJ can see Gordon Johncock very clearly. He's been given his information from his pit board by Jack Stern, who's out there on the pit wall. But more important than anything else for a race driver, AJ Foyt can see Gordon Johncock ahead of him. It's a bright day-glow-coloured car that AJ is looking for, and that's AJ that just darted out behind that slower car, looking for Gordon Johncock, trying to pick up his draft, trying to see what fractions of seconds he can pick up through this racetrack.
At this point, can Johncock see AJ in his mirror?
He should be able to see AJ Foyt in his mirror as well, but of course he's being... there it is, the end of the day for Janet Guthrie. That car being pulled up to get pushed back into Gasoline Alley and into the garage area, but that's the end for Janet. But boy, are these people going, and that's the man who seems to be charging harder than anybody else. He's really fast at the racetrack.
Nobody has ever won this race 4 times in their life. A.J. Foyt is sure trying. There are about 21 laps left in the 1977 Indianapolis 500. There's the sign to A.J. Foyt, minus 10 seconds. He has closed from about 25 seconds down to 10.
Yeah, he's really closed up. He was at one time beyond 30 seconds behind Gordon Johncock. A.J. Foyt has now been given that pit board within 10 seconds of Gordon Johncock. That pit board being held by Jack Stern, one of the men who's been with A.J. Foyt for a great number of years. giving him that information, even though there's radio contact. That pit board is still important. Gordon Johncock, there, knowing that A.J. Foyt is really closing in on him. How does he feel? It's not nice to know that you're driving as hard as you can. And there's the McNaughty message.
Well,
it says 8 seconds, Jim.
You think they're trying to push Gordy a little bit? Because we got it that it's still 10 seconds. They're telling him it's only 8.
I think they're trying to just buck him up a little bit. I don't know, to give him that little bit of push, to give him a little bit of pressure. McNaughty knows what he's doing. He's had a lot of winners here, as we said earlier. He's had 6 winners, more winners than any other chief mechanic in Indianapolis history. Of course, he's had A.J. Foyt as a winner. Now Gordon Johncock is heading towards that victory if he can keep himself together and can keep A.J. Foyt behind him. But that's no easy matter.
10 seconds is still a long time. He did manage to stretch it back out to 10 seconds there, and seems to be holding it. And with less than 20 laps to go, A.J. has a real problem.
Well, 10 seconds. Each second in this racetrack is about the length of a football field, so he's 10 football fields behind Gordon Johncock. He's got it down to 7 seconds now. And A.J., a discrepancy of 2 seconds.
Okay.
And there's A.J. as he goes through there. The car looking as if it's still handling well, smooth as silk. Obviously not wishing to get aggressive or get his car loose in a case like this. He's within sight of a possible victory, and he just doesn't want to let anything go wrong now. He's waited 10 years for this, Jim, for the last one.
Our unofficial watch has it the same as Voigt's pit crew is giving him, 9 seconds.
Well,
not the 7 that they're giving to John Clark.
I can only think that McNaughty is giving him that to get him a little bit worried.
All right, A.J. Foyt still in second place, but second place is almost meaningless, I suspect, to this man at this point. Victory is what he's after.
And Gordon Johncock's in the pits. He's come into the pit stop. Have we got a clock on him? Yes, the clock is on. Gordon Johncock is in there. Whole team working on him. Very, very crucial. If they make a mistake here, pouring more water onto him. Asking for more water. Putting his hands down there. 12, 13 seconds, 14 seconds. He's supposed to win 14.7 seconds. Not as fast as there have been, and not as fast as A.J.'s pit.
Also, but remember, A.J.'s Foyt still must make one more pit stop. There's no way he can go to the finish without a pit stop also.
It seems to me that if A.J. Foyt was now in this, he's waited a long time to get his 4th victory. I don't think A.J. Foyt's going to want to finish second here. He's got that push control beside him. If he needs to turn that thing up, it's going to be all for winning the race, not for finishing second. And A.J., is he heading for the pits? Yes, A.J. Foyt's coming into pit lane now. The red car on the left-hand side of your screen.
Speed of the essence. Will Johncock pass by to retake the lead? Remember, Foyt took the lead when Johncock pitted. Now it's Foyt's turn to pit. Johncock racing around this track at a speed of probably 190 miles an hour.
And there you see the clock. A crucial pit stop at this stage in the race. Very, very important. And he's
Johncock's gotten by.
But he's out in a much faster time, 12.4 seconds. Considerable advantage over the Johncock stop.
He should gain, but he will not have the lead. Gordon Johncock still leading the race over A.J. Foyt.
And A.J. Foyt changed 2 tires there. That means he's got fresh rubber in the inside as well. He's very well equipped to go hard if he needs to go hard. And at the tail end of this race, when they're as close as they are now, that's important. But Gordon Johncock is ahead of him in the racetrack, and there aren't too many more laps left.
He's ahead of him by 7 or 8 seconds. There are only 17 laps left in the race. So Gordon Johncock is moving toward what could be his second victory in the Indianapolis 500.
He's pulled across.
What's happened?
Of smoke. Gordon Johncock, the leader of the Indy 500, is running down the side of pit lane now. Still on the racetrack. He's got a big problem.
We've seen this sort of thing so many times in Indianapolis. Just when it looked like it was all wrapped up, there he is off the track. It's all over for Gordon Johncock. A.J. Foyt leads the Indianapolis 500.
He can't get out the car quick enough. He's really getting out. He's struggling to get out. He's a tired man. Look at his head. He's tired. He's very tired. He's wanting to get out.
There's no one near A.J. now.
Almost staggering out the race car there. And there's the Gordon Johncock pit. Look, they've got their heads down. The pit board is slammed down. He's sitting down in the car. He's tired. He can't even take his helmet off.
And how discouraged he must be. Victory right within his grasp. And there is A.J. Foyt. He must almost be disbelieving of what has happened here.
Well, A.J. Foyt must now know that Gordon Johncock is out of the race. He's been told in his radio, I am sure. The crowd are screaming. You can hear them over the noise of these cars as Gordon Johncock now has his helmet off. I know the feeling. 8 laps from the end in 1966. I fell out of the motor race while I was leading the race by quite a big margin. But there's the man now that is leading the race by a considerable margin, A.J. Foyt, and this could be a historic to win his 4th Indy 500.
Well, nobody's ever done it, as we've mentioned so many times. And A.J. has chased this elusive prize for so long. It was watched him win for the last time here at Indianapolis, and then go on to win the 24 Hours of Le Mans less than 2 weeks later. The only man ever to accomplish a feat like that. And now he must be just hoping that everything will stay together for the remainder of the race.
With that big long shot, it almost looked to hit the whole racetrack on his own.
Gordie Johncock is down in the creek. I don't know whether he's in it or getting some water. There's splashing himself with water. We'll be back. It's very, very close to the end. A weary Gordon Johncock waving to the crowd as they cheer him in the pit area, walking it home, as so many drivers have before him, including Jackie Stewart, as he himself mentioned a minute ago.
Talking to the chief mechanic of Johnny Rutherford there, a man he had a battle with earlier on this year in Phoenix, Arizona. But there's your man, A.J. Foyt, driving along there. He seems to almost have the whole racetrack to himself. An amazing feeling it must be.
Chris Economaki moving in towards Gordon Johncock. We're going to have a word from the defeated man right now. All right, Chris.
Okay, disappointed Gordon Johncock. You're soaking wet. Gordy, what was it that knocked you out?
Well, I guess the engine went bad coming out of number 4 corner. I saw it start to vibrate, so I pulled down out of the groove.
How hard were you pushing the car in the late stages?
Oh, I've been pushing that car hard all day, just hard as I could go. I don't think I've ever been any tighter than I am right now.
How about you're soaking wet? Is that from perspiration?
Well, a little bit, but I jumped in the creek.
You jumped in the creek?
Yeah, the creek down there where I stopped, so I jumped in the cool water and cooled off a little bit.
You don't seem to feel too bad, Gordon.
No, I feel all right, you know, just pretty disappointed because I think we had it in the bag.
Was the heat a problem for you today?
Well, it was a little bit hot, yeah. It was, that would like to have been a little cooler, that's for sure.
Well, as they say in baseball, it's always next year, Gordon Johncock.
Well, we'll sure be here trying.
Okay, Gordon Johncock, a tough man on the racetrack, out in the late stages. Back to you, Jim.
And now we have about 2.5 laps left in this race. There is starter Pat Bedan. He'll have the checkered flag. Tom Steva is in second place, but he's way, way back. It is, in fact, right now, A.J. Foyt first and everybody else behind. Steva sat on the pole, has given a good account of himself today, but he's not going to win it unless something very sudden happens to the automobile of A.J. Foyt.
Well, I can imagine the air in the A.J. Foyt pit now is very pregnant indeed. Tony Foyt, A.J.'s father, with only 2 laps to go. That's not very far, that's 5 miles. And at those sort of speeds, that's not going to take too long. You know, for A.J., it must be a confusing thing going through his head now. He must know that 10 years ago he won his last one. He must be wondering, will the car just hold for please 2 more laps? 1.5 laps right now. Please, Lord, let it last. You feel little vibrations. You're frightened to even think about the possibility that you're going to win a race.
Only other slight possibility is that he might run out of fuel. Of course, he did early in the competition today. And they figured the fuel very, very close. Standing by for the white flag.
Well, I reckon he's pussyfooting that throttle pretty well. And there's the white flag by Pat Bedan being held out. I'll bet you anything he's driving with more economy than any Scotsman would economize with right now. I bet he's not giving it all he can give it right down that throttle of that great big turbocharged engine that he himself has put together. The man is a constructor, a designer. He seems to run the operation. He seems to be the mechanics. He seems to be everybody else right now. And look at Jim Gilmer and the rest of the team. They're even getting ready for it. And A.J.'s father on the left of the screen.
Coming down towards turn 3. It's the final lap of the Indianapolis 500. A.J. Foyt is going to make motor racing history. The first man ever to win this great race 4 times. It started in 1911. This is the 61st race, and no one has ever achieved this before. Stand by for the checkered flag. The black and white checkered flag, and in the pits, the red and white checkered shirts of the Gilmore Foyt team. It's all over. A.J. has done it. He has won his 4th Indianapolis 500.
He's already pulled off the racetrack. He's got right, and look at the crowd cheering, clapping, waving their arms at their American hero. He's gone right off the racetrack. He's gone right down below the white line. He's going straight into an area that he hasn't been using all day long.
Jackie, this is the most exciting moment I think we've ever seen since we've been coming to Indianapolis.
I think everybody's been waiting for AJ to win his 4th race. It's never happened before. I think a mark in history when a thing like this happens. I think everyone is excited by it.
You're looking at them now. Wally Dallenbach, 4th. 5th, Johnny Parsons. 6th, Tom Bigelow. Lou Kunzman, 7th. Roger McCluskey, 8th. 9th, Steve Krisiloff. And 10th, Jerry Sneva. And it appears that Jerry Sneva, brother of Tom Sneva, will be named the Rookie of the Year tomorrow. And the next rookie to finish was Danny Ungaius. As we look at the rest of the finishes, the 11th car that was running at the end was number 31, driven by John Mailer until the last 6 laps when his relief driver was Larry Cannon. Here's the time of the race, 3 minutes, 5 seconds, .5. And A.J. Foyt, who won his first of 4 in 1961, has bettered his 500-mile trip by a total of 1/2 hour. 3:35 and 61, 3:05 here in 1977. What you saw happened 7.5 hours ago. Now, we are live. Let's go to Jackie Stewart, Jim McKay, and a nice guest.